My name is Wendy Garrett, and I work as an intuitive or a channel, and I do it part-time. It's something that I don't do it as a profession. I do it as a hobby, as a personal interest of places that are either historic or there's been some kind of sometimes a catastrophe or something that's unsettled. And so my goal is to go in and see if I can settle things down and see if I can pick up anything that would be helpful for the people who are either in the space now or who would like to leave the space and no longer have a body. I began channeling in 1997 when I had my nightlights start interacting, and so that's my connection. Still does it to this day. It's interactive, it's electric, it's how I know that we aren't alone, and it's a consistent source of positive energy influence, saying that we have a lot to learn when it comes to our other abilities, psychic abilities and beyond. First of all, I wanted to walk the grounds just because it's the space, not just the house, that is part of this, of any history. It's the energy of the space. The first thing I noticed was the creek, and the creek was apparently a passage route, and so there would have been people, lots of people, animals coming up and down the creek. It's also a way of keeping things quiet, as it were, instead of roads and clandestine travel. Initially there's a heaviness, so it's like if you're doing a barometric pressure, it would feel like you were underwater. It isn't a light space, but I also feel it's much more serious. You know, this is a serious, the energy here is it's welcoming in a way to say, take notes, learn a lesson. Hiking around it, understand the beauty of the space before people come in and decide to destroy it. I mean, this is a reserve, a nature. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. That when you bring a war to this space, then you have the overlay of the energy that is. It's hard to go camping in a place like this. You have lots of company because some of these battles are replayed. And you will feel or sense an image, a battle, and they're not still there. But it's the image that is so intense and so strong that represents what happened. It was a tsunami. All of a sudden, everything came back and it looked like it might go away, and then everything hit. And when that happened, there was no turning back. It was gone. Then everybody's angry. And then the angry fuels. So then you get the volcano.
Several years ago, while I was driving the back roads to Baldwin to watch my granddaughters, I encountered what I felt was more of an imprint than a haunting. It was between 5 and 5:30 in the morning and very dark. I was headed north on the county road by Blackjack. I normally never went this way unless we were just driving around during the daylight. But the train tracks where I live in Les Loupes were blocked, leaving me no other choice. I was more focused on watching for deer than spirits, so I wasn't going very fast. Something captured my eyesight on the left. It didn't scare me, but shocked me, as I saw a campsite with soldiers dressed in battle gray. There were also a few men standing, and one was looking my way. He looked tired and was carrying what looked like a tin cup. It was like I was spying on a scene from a movie. I drove on, but never forgot this or the feeling of sadness I felt.
This place has a whole different feel at night. And especially because the only electric light, the only light off of electricity is in that back hall. So the rest of this house, none of it has light. So when we come into the house in the evening, and when we used to do our board meetings in here, we had a little work light that we'd set up over our table where we use lanterns. I have had an experience. So I've been doing reenacting, Civil War reenacting, since I was 14 years old. And I was the commander of the 13th Kansas Infantry Regiment. And we used to do our spring musters out here, and we used to bring folks out all the time. And there was a core group of, 12 to 15 of us, and we'd come out almost every weekend. We loved being out here at Blackjack, taking care of stuff, and the feeling when you come out here, you feel like you're in the 1850s and the 1860s. So we really liked that primitive feel. So we'd come out here and camp, and we'd do projects and different things. We were camped out here in the front, and we knew that there was a storm coming in, so we camped between the two rows of trees, thinking that that would provide some shelter from the wind. Well, it didn't. And the officers and the NCOs, most of us have wall tents, and they're canvas, so they're quite heavy. And the wind came up and started shifting them, so we knew they were coming down. So rather than let them come down and risk damaging all of our equipment, we folded them down, and we all got our blankets and things and came in the front door in the front room there. And we came in and we all piled into the parlor, and we were sleeping on the floor. So there was a lot of lightning, and we were doing this basically in the dark, and the lightning was lighting our way. I mean, the lightning was furious. It was here and here and here and here. So every time there was a flash, we could see what we were doing. So we were moving into the house. We all kind of were laying down on the floor, and I was out in the front, the closest to the front door of the parlor. And there's a stairway that goes straight up to the upstairs, and there's a window immediately at the top of that stairway. And I remember just as I was starting to lay down, there was a flash of lightning, and there was a figure standing at the top of the stairs in that window. You could see the clear silhouette with the lightning. I mean, it looked like a man. Didn't look like, but it was just for the briefest of seconds, and because the light was back behind, it was completely dark figure. And there's no trees outside the window, there was nobody else in the house. We all saw it, and we all got real quiet, and as the lightning flashed, you could see everybody was looking at the room. We were all looking around at each other, and we tried to rationalize it afterward. You know, somebody must have been up there. But the stairs are very narrow. The tread on the stairs is very narrow, and the stair rise is very steep. In a lot of these old houses, that's, you know, the stairs are difficult to navigate. And they're wood, so they make a lot of noise. There's no way to sneak up the stairs. And there were 6 of us in that front room. And I know as I looked around, I counted 6 heads, and there's no way somebody moved that fast. So several of us said, we're out, and we immediately left. We said we'd rather take our chances with the storm.
I would venture to say that about 95 to 98% of the people, their first trip to Gettysburg, they have a feeling here. And it's because they know they're in a different special place. It's kind of like walking into church, okay? It's just a building, but when you walk in there, you feel different. And Gettysburg is very, very similar, and it almost it almost captures you in a way. And you know, if you want to say it, you know, it's maybe the ghosts are giving you a little nudge, you know, saying, you know, we're still here, don't forget us. After having written 8 books on Gettysburg, working on a 9th, I think there may be several reasons why these ghosts keep talking to us or tapping us on the shoulder literally, or whispering in our ear, and many people on our tours have experienced this. This all started years and years ago when I was a National Park Ranger here at Gettysburg. And the park rangers stay in the different houses out on the battlefield and for security purposes. And so I lived in 4 of them over the time that I was here. And really in every single one of them I had something weird, something unexplainable that happened. Doors that wouldn't stay closed, things like that. But the one that really struck me that really kind of was a catalyst for all this was in the National Cemetery Lodge. I was living in a lodge that was headquarters for the park rangers there. And it was the middle of the afternoon, and I was taking my dishes out from the dining room to the kitchen, and all of a sudden, I heard a baby cry. And which was weird because I was the only one in the house at the time, and there were no babies there, it was all adults. When there were people there. And I stopped and I was wondering what did I just hear? House settling, pipes, and it was a baby crying. So I just, took my dishes out. Next day or so, I went into I was in the coffee room, and I happened to mention it, and somebody said, "You need to talk to Mrs. Such and Such, who lived there just before you did." So I called her up and I talked to her, and sure enough, she had heard babies crying numerous times in that house. And all this really I kind of shrugged it off for a little bit until I realized one day, just down the street, down the hill from the National Cemetery Lodge, was the old orphanage. The orphanage that was established for the soldiers' children who had been orphaned. And the second matron there was really nasty. She would virtually torture the kids for punishment. And it started to fall into place here, It's children just 2 doors down, baby crying, mean matron. Okay, maybe there's something to what I heard that maybe was a warp into the past or whatever. So that was actually my first personal experience. But I'd heard other stories from older park rangers and actually from tourists that came in and told a story, but I just wasn't, didn't. So it was at that point I started collecting these stories, jotting them down, and continued to collect these stories for a number of years, 10, 15 years, and finally approached the publisher and said, "Would you like some of the ghost stories of Gettysburg?" And he said, "Sure." So I put them together, and that is the very first book. That's this one over here. When that book came out, it like I said, it took about 10, 12 years to collect all the stories together. Within 2 weeks after that book came out, I started getting letters, phone calls, faxes. This is before Twitter or tweets or anything like that. And people basically saying, "My neighbors are wrong, I'm not crazy. Here's what happened to me at Gettysburg." And I keep getting letters to this day, some 20, 30 years later, that of things that have happened to people out on the battlefield or in the town, because the town was part of the battlefield as well. Later on, then I did in one of my later books, I had to do a chapter called Deja Vu, because a lot of the stories that I heard 15, 20 years ago are happening again. They're happening to different people, same venue, same site, same stories. And the people that are in those venues are not familiar with the stories that happened before.
There are multitudes, but they don't all have a voice. They're not all able to speak because, for one thing, we don't relate to them. They don't see us. We sense them and they sense us, but we're in a different plane, in a different timeline even. So some of them are still going through that battle. It never ended because that's all they can see. Those emotions ramp things up, and so sometimes you get caught in a loop. And that's what they would be experiencing, is their loop. That's why it's like, when you come to a place like this, it has more to do with understanding you're visiting a time capsule. And so on some level, for the people who are no longer here, the deceased, their time is still happening because emotionally they're in that spot, which is good to get your business taken care of before you check out. That's why they say, get rid of your baggage. This is baggage. And so they don't have a singular voice. They are images and they are energy. And so being here, it would be more active and you would feel that on occasion. It isn't 24/7 that you'll feel it. It's different times of day, different times of year, different emotions. Bring it on. If somebody has more emotional issues, they're going to be more in touch with it and not understand exactly what's going on. And that's how it works. So you keep your personality balanced. You go in with reverence and say, what can I learn? What can I learn in a space like this? Because that way you don't take anything home. And you also give yourself a chance to see where things could be different now, and we don't have to repeat these cycles.
On the next episode of Free State Horror Stories, Wendy Garrett goes inside the Pearson home to investigate which cycles may be on loop inside this space. Thank you for joining us.